Know what energizes you and what drains you, because that's part of it. This is your opportunity, right? You're not giving yourself another job.
Welcome to Built for Profit podcast, where entrepreneurs share real stories and strategies that actually work. We're here to inspire, challenge, and give you the playbook to profit with purpose. Let's get into it. Let's do it. One of the things that really separates a brand as we're looking at it is not just the why behind it, but how they make their customer feel. And absolutely, I'm being biased for this one because I am a parent of young children, but I know specifically when I was looking for a place for them to go during the day, I wasn't just looking for a place that they could be taken care of, although very important, but also I teach them at home. I care for them in a different way. And I know a lot of parents care about that. And that's why we have our guest that we do today and the brand, because this aligns. We've got Mark Abitrio with us today from Ivybrook Academy, and this is what they specialize in. So I won't say it for you, Mark. We want to hear it from you, but tell us, for anyone who isn't aware of Ivybrook Academy and the way that you operate, just give us a short overview.
It's a half-day preschool, so very different than, your typical daycare where, as you sort of said, just dropping my kids off, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I did before doing this as well, right? It's because what we had to do. But if you have the opportunity and you have the flexibility to do a half-day sort of program, it works very perfectly for our families, right? They are not coming here to just drop their kids off because they don't have to. Generally it's work from home, stay at home, flexibility with parents, things of that nature. And this model is a very focused half-day model where there's a lot of individualized learning that goes on. There's a very, very strong social emotional base, kind of the basis for everything, right? I tell everyone that walks in the door, your child can end up being the smartest kid in kindergarten, but if they struggle socially emotionally, they're going to struggle. So that's a big piece of this, especially with the younger ages, where a lot of people come to us, say, my kid's doing well. Maybe they're working with them at home and they know a lot of their numbers, et cetera, but they need that social interaction. And so that's a big, big part of it, to become good little people and make some good friends and give them the tools to be able to interact with each other and then build on that. Because I definitely don't want to diminish the educational aspect of it, because part of the big role that we have is to prep them for kindergarten and beyond. And the curriculum is outstanding and it's very individualized at certain parts where if they're ready for it, they've got stuff that goes up to third grade level.
Can you talk a little bit about that curriculum, Mark? Because not trying to just share my own experience, but my older son, sorry, sometimes the first one, they get some mistakes. Some mistakes are made. And he, went to a place that was probably more daycare.
Sure.
And then, my second did not. And what he knew going into kindergarten is significantly different. And I saw it firsthand because they've been in the same house. They were being taught, similar from my husband and I, but what they learned at school was not the same. And I didn't think it would make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
And it did. So can you talk a little bit about the curriculum?
Sure. I mean, there's really kind of four main parts. So it's a blend of things, which I think is important because you can take any discipline too far one way or the other, right? And so a lot of people have heard about Montessori, and if you went to 5 different Montessori schools, you might have 5 different explanations on how they implement it. And think of it as like play-based learning through projects. So they're coming up with the ideas and then we're creating the projects around them. So we like to say we meet the kiddos where they are. And that's a big part of it. So they all come from different places, social, emotionally, educationally. That's normal. And so we want to keep them moving along. And then the last bit's a lot of fun. It's called Discovery. Think of it as specials a little bit. So we rotate through Spanish, music, yoga, and art. So have a lot of fun along the way. And for those 4 parts of the program, roughly every half hour, 25 minutes or so, it's like pop, pop, pop. We're keeping them engaged. So it's not a place just to come and just kind of survive the morning. We really want to keep developing these young minds.
Yeah, I love the customization of it. Me too. I'm wondering how we can make our work more play-based.
You guys seem like you have a lot of fun yourselves,
tripping.
so that's good.
So how do you train or onboard?
First of all, we have great support from the franchise. I mean, if they're thinking of, doing a franchise type of thing, doing your research on that, and when you go do Discovery Day, that sort of thing, really kind of see what's real and talking to the owners about the level of support that you get. As you grow, you get that muscle memory, right? And your teachers we're always learning and they're always improving the curriculum and the tools and all that stuff, right? But they're not hovering either, which I like a lot as well. You have autonomy as long as you're representing their brand well and producing. So it's a great relationship with the franchisor.
Nice. So I want to back up a little bit, if you will. So I know most of the stories, Elizabeth, we hear, you don't just wake up one day. I think your background was in management and look longingly into someone's eyes and go, I think I'm going to open an Ivybrook Academy.
Yeah.
So take us
Sure.
back. How did
Well,
you get
sometimes
here?
there's a forcing function, which I imagine is what some of your audience has had experience with them, right? So large corporate business, rounds of layoffs, and what am I going to do now, right? I could keep doing what I'm doing, and that's would have been an option and totally fine. And then there were times before that where my wife and I were sitting down talking about maybe we should do a business. Okay. And usually that was over a beer at a brewery, to be quite honest with you. But, this is a nice forcing function in that way. And to their credit, this is General Electric, and they actually, gave us a 101 on buying a business, starting a business, doing a franchise, right? To help you transition into your next kind of journey in life there, which is great. So I learned about the whole franchise model, at a high level, and that piqued my interest. I didn't realize you could move 401k money over without tax penalty, things like that. So it made it more feasible. And so then, I did a lot of due diligence on that and say, okay, which ones we did. Worked with a broker. They presented 5-6 different options and sat down, and this one shot right to the top for several reasons. I mean, one was when I got laid off was a month before my son was born. So great timing. It was stressful, but at the same time, like when you think about, okay, I wanted to get into something that, I would feel good at the end of the day. My whole life was managing PowerPoints. And while there was some professional adrenaline there, working with smart people, there was also a lot of just, what have I done today at the end of the day, right? And so I wanted to do something that was different from that. Being able to do this with and have my own kiddo go through it was amazing as well. I had a lot of respect for education in general because my mother was a teacher. My wife's parents were both educators as well. And then when we went out there, I met Drew and Jennifer. They walk the walk. You guys talked about them earlier, and they really do. I mean, they create, this is their baby. And so from that respect, at the end of the day, I get to walk around, get hugs from 2 to 5-year-olds, and get called Mr. Mark, right? I would never go back to my previous life.
You're definitely walking the walk of profits
Yeah,
with
well, thank you.
purpose. I mean, that's what it's about, it's passion. Yeah, and that's why we're really bullish on the franchise concepts because they give you the winning chocolate chip recipe or whatever. They give you the things to help you catapult that curve of learning quicker.
Yeah.
And they have a higher success rate for sure.
And I think it speaks so loudly when a parent or just a person in general is saying, I would choose this for my family and am choosing this for my family or for my life, for my business, whatever that category is. It just speaks volumes because, you're making that choice personally. I'm curious, Mark, because Shay and I have spent a lot of time over the past year. And when I say a lot, really a lot, speaking to prospective franchisees, right? They know that they want to be in that space. They've made that choice. But the number one question that we get is, which one should I choose?
Know what your professional adrenaline is, and also the other side. Know what you hate, right? This comes into play here. Am I going to love what I do or not? Because that's a big deal.
Yeah. And when you say professional adrenaline, you're saying like which part lights you up through the day, or how would you tell someone to tap into that if they're like, I don't know, Mark, I've been working for someone just following directions for 15 years. I'm not sure what my
that's fair too. Because
is.
like if you had asked me, hey, before doing this, are kids your professional adrenaline? Are you going to want to be in the service industry, or are you capable of it, but it's not your sweet spot? Does it just exhaust you? And so that's things like that. And you can still do a service industry if you surround yourself with people. But at the end of the day, I've kind of always felt that the franchise is the brand, of course. You're part of that though, and you build the culture. And so being present in a service industry, to me, I feel like you're building those relationships, and thus you have that higher percentage of succeeding.
So true. Do you have a story where you've experienced that firsthand? Obviously, your professional background sounds very strong, so I'm sure you came in with a lot of knowledge, but it's impossible not to have some struggles or setbacks.
Well, I was probably 10 miles wide and a quarter inch deep, I would say, in my professional background. But yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, we opened in November 2020. Not the best time to be opening any business, of course, but we started out small. We only opened with 35 families, I think, something like that. And that allowed me at the time to just, be out front, talking to them, talking to the moms, the dads, whatever, and just greeting the kids when they come. And sometimes even after they drop the kids off, just talking to the parents for a while. So when COVID hit, and there were certainly, of course, opinions on what to do, what not to do on both sides, it really enabled me to have difficult conversations that people say, hey, I'm not comfortable with what the state's asking you guys to do. And I said, well, listen, here's how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and the flexibility we're giving families and things like that. Being able to look someone in the eye and have that kind of a conversation versus just saying, here's what we're going to do in an email, went a long way. I mean, I could have lost half my families. And instead, I gained a few from places that didn't have those relationships built. But I think that was the foundation that really reinforced what I had already believed, but certainly reinforced it, where that's the key in this particular industry for sure, is building those relationships, because people will tell other people about it because of how they feel, not because what you're doing.
And you are basically caretaking their most precious precious thing. I
Yep,
mean,
for
your
sure.
children.
For sure.
That young
Yeah, when they
minds,
see that growth,
good
then when they
steward at that.
see, especially the best stories are the ones that struggle when they first came for one reason or another. And sometimes it's harder than the parents and the kiddo, right? But to see
True.
that growth and just, have people write paragraph reviews or just get emotional and talking about the stuff from a feedback loop perspective.
Yeah, you're definitely making an impact in what you're doing. So we always talk to successful people because you want to stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from them. What are some of the keys to success?
I
Advice
think
here?
first of all, know yourself and what you're getting into, of course, right? And understand that in any business, you're as a leader going to be building that culture. What do you want that culture to be? And be genuine about it too, because if you're not, they're going to know. I would say, depending on the business, if you can, as a part of that culture, be on the heavier side of having, obviously everyone wants good people, but no one hires their all-star team on day one, right? And so if you can be a little bit heavier on having people in the building, especially in a service type of environment, for a couple of reasons. It's obviously great for your clients, but to me, it's also great for your people. So this specific industry is very difficult. People aren't getting paid a lot of money, right? And it's their passion. The people who do this do it because they are very passionate about teaching young children. But it's also very draining, right? It's something I couldn't do. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, these are very special ladies, and you want to support them as much as you can, whether that's the little things you do every day, asking about their family, or just doing a Starbucks run or whatever, or the larger things where you're like, okay, I'm going to commit to having a better ratio in the room than I need to, because I know that now you're not going to be gasping for air just to survive the day in the morning, that you will have time to do what you want to do and to be passionate about. And that pays off in the long term. It sounds like, well, it's a lot of cost. Well, it can be. But when I hear people be concerned or be stressed about one thing or another in this particular industry, it's usually about their staff. And man, I keep losing people. It's hard to hire good people. Well, the best way to do that is to keep them, find them and keep them. And again, it sounds easy to do. It's not. It takes a lot of work, but it's so worth it in the long run. Because when I have parents come and I tell them, hey, we've only had 4 lead teachers leave us since 2020, people almost fall over because that's almost unheard of, but it's done with purpose.
It's kind of like the mob. Once you get over there, you keep
I
them.
love that. Yeah.
Mark, I've seen 2 different brands across 2 different states from my own kids. And amongst the parents, we would say kind of the same thing that you just said. We're like, the turnover is almost unbelievable of what we saw with staff. So can you dive into that a little bit more? Like you talked about doing things like recognizing them
Sure.
and some things like that. But that, I'm sure you're doing a little bit more than that to keep great people. And especially from a parent's perspective, we see that, it can be a red flag.
He's saying you should recognize it too, by the way. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's little things, little spontaneous things like that are great because it's the unexpected stuff. I remember even my old world, right? It's like even just whether it's a pat on the back or I noticed that you did this, or we get a Google review and I will immediately text it out to all the teachers, right? And say, hey, great job. Especially the timing's important on that too. If you're able to do it relatively soon, because then they're feeling that. Recognizing them in front of the parents is a big deal as well. Doing things like, we have a spreadsheet with all the teacher favorites, a whole list of things that I send out to the parents and remind them, hey, remember it's so-and-so's birthday this month, and then they'll come in and like surprise with flower, whatever, those little things. But then it's just asking them, being conscious, to the extent that they want to be, right? And offering to help where you can. I mean, everybody's situation is different. Giving flexibility where you can. And people earn it too, right? The better employees, you're going to end up being a lot more flexible because it's so worth it, because the loyalty there is paid back in spades. It's the right thing to do anyway. These are good people. Like I said, they're doing it not to make a fortune in this world, right? They're doing it because they're passionate about what they're doing. And I want to make them feel good about that in any way I can.
There's so many things there to unpack. This is like a smorgasbord of stuff here. First of all, I appreciate you giving specific examples. Those are things that people can take in different industries. But we get asked this a lot, or it comes up when people say, make a good culture. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Like, go world peace.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for people to quantify the things that actually build cultures that retain tension and performance and all the good things you talk about. And you just gave a list of them.
You gave a list that speaks our language. We're like, you got the 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you. I can go implement those.
Yeah.
But you also had a recurring theme that I know we both heard of seeing people and recognition. I know that sounds simple, like treat people like people and recognize them as humans, but it can be so easily overlooked. And so speaking to your leadership, that's a takeaway for anyone listening about retention. And also it's clear that you're hiring the right people from the beginning.
Definitely put a lot into that, right? But I would also say, nobody's perfect. I mean, there is such a thing as good attrition. And I steal this line from one of our conferences that we had that someone mentioned, the Chicago Bulls didn't start out with their all-star team. They start with some really core people and find those people and hang on for dear life. And then you build that roster, as you grow, as you learn, because learning is part of this too, right? There's certain attributes that I really want to look for that, and I want to try to avoid this, right? And every industry is going to have different aspects of that. So it's like I said, yes, it's wonderful to have a great staff now. And, I'd say the vast majority of the people that we brought in, I would hire again in a heartbeat. But it doesn't always work out that way, but you learn from that.
And I like that because I don't know of a business that we've ever talked to, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, Mark. Every business is a people business, whether it's your clients, your staff, your team, even the dog business is people business.
You're so right.
This is great stuff, but remember I said,
Yeah, no, you're
on the
good.
spot,
You put
Mark?
me on the spot. We'll see how I do.
And Elizabeth has no idea what's coming. So, all stories are great. You're very successful. You're making an impact.
Yeah.
You're showing up. You're all these good things. What was the biggest lesson you learned the hard way?
Oh, let's see. I think probably, I would say with hiring, it's harder now with AI and everything where you can't read a resume and assume that that person can articulate themselves or that will be what they're going to be like in front of parents and kids and whatnot, right? And so obviously you need to interview in person. But when you first start out, especially, every person that signs up, you're doing a happy dance. Because if there's a high, you've invested a lot and it's easy to, I guess, hire someone because, hey, I just got to have somebody. And sometimes you do, right? Sometimes it's just like, you know what? I've got to have somebody. But, I would say you definitely want to do your due diligence and make sure that you take the extra week to see, hey, am I not going to be able to open if I don't have this? Now you're doing well and you can be a little bit more selective, not just with your employees, but also, and to some degree, even with parents, right? And trust your spider sense a little bit on a lot of these things, and that takes some experience a little bit. I'm trying to think of another example, but I think that would be the biggest one is trying to make sure your people are your business, at least in a lot, like you said, right already, to almost any business. And they're going to be reflective of your culture too. So you want to make sure you're doing the best job you can there to bring in the right people and do it slowly if you can, because it's worth it.
I've got a question because this came up as you were speaking. Can you talk a little bit about the balance managing the customer is always right type mentality? Because we're going to say the customer is the
sure.
parent in this. I know you got the children as kind of and also upholding your standards or how you run the business. How do you balance
Sure.
that? Can you talk about that a little bit, Mark?
99% of the time, you're right. I mean, like you said, the customer's right. Even if you have to eat a fill in the blank sandwich and smile, because at the end of the day, I think you have to recognize, have the mindset that it's more often than not, almost always never personal. It's not at you. There may be something going on in their own lives or whatever that this is an outlet, perhaps to manifest that frustration or whatever. So I always try to keep that in mind because you don't know what people are going through outside when you see them at drop off and pick up a lot. So you have to kind of take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. And then I think going above and beyond when you have flexibility to give it, and you don't have to trumpet it, but people will recognize it. Then, I'm doing everything I can here. And I've kind of listed all that stuff out. And I said, if you're that unhappy about the situation of being here, I'm happy to refund your money and that sort of thing. But that's kind of the last resort sort of thing. But I do let them know where that line is. And this has only happened once or twice, right? The type of thing. I say, question a lot of things about how we do, what we do, et cetera, all this stuff. But like, to me, that's a line in the sand, because everything I've done has been above and beyond and with respect to that. And so when you question that makes me question whether this is the right place for both of us.
Well put.
Absolutely. Because the older my kids get, the more I realize kids are opinionated and they are very opinionated when it comes to their kids and how they think things should be done. And so anyone who's in a position like you are, it's just so respected of having to make those decisions, but still navigating those lines of how things need to operate for the school or the business or the company while also respecting.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to make everybody happy to their whatever degree, right? I mean, you try, but I understand that that's almost an impossible equation.
It's probably definitely an impossible equation.
And on that note, all good things. Mark, it has been absolutely a pleasure visiting with you. I love the representation of a whole different industry that does make an impact, right? You do profit with purpose and little lives and families, and I'm sure all the things that go with it. Before we close up and wrap out, is there anything that you want to make sure you absolutely share?
In general, yeah. So, I think choose wisely, right? Like know yourself, those are kind of some of the key things. Know that, again, you're the culture, right? You're going to be that driver of that, and the success of your business is going to rest heavily on that. And just know what energizes you and what drains you, because that's part of it. This is your opportunity, right? You're not giving yourself another job, right? You're not going into business to give yourself another job. You're doing it hopefully for a lot of other reasons. Write down what those reasons are. When you first start out, I would also just kind of say, hey, everybody is busy. whether it's especially in a startup kind of world, the more you're able to prioritize what you're doing, just something as simple as like putting down effort versus impact and putting on a piece of paper and say, if I'm spending any time doing stuff that's not high impact, low effort stuff, I'm probably not doing the right stuff right now. So people can get overwhelmed. You will get overwhelmed when you first start. You're going to try and do everything all at once, and it can be very stressful. So that's a good tool I've used sometimes just to kind of say, hey, take a break. What am I working on? And then put it down like that. It's been a pleasure, guys. I appreciate the questions. And it's normal. And I think there are going to be ups and downs. You're going to be like, oh yes, I start making money. Right. Yeah, I know. Right. Gasp. But you start making money and then like, oh crud, I gotta hire someone. But know that if you're doing the right things and you've picked the right business, etc., your trajectory will be up, but there will be, the dips and peaks and valleys, etc. in that journey. Don't get discouraged by that. Stay the course. You did this for a reason. And if that core of what you believed in and what you're bringing to the table is still there, that trajectory will continue to go upwards.
We are proud that today's episode was brought to us by Imperial Design and Display.
Elizabeth, when you walk into a retail store and you see all the products, the merchandise, the racks, all that good stuff.
Yes, everything that distracts.
There you go. That's what Imperial Design and Display does. They're a U.S. manufacturing company, which big for me, all right, made in the USA. They do everything from design, installation to program management. They get it done.
Yeah, and the caliber of brands that they work with is very impressive. Not trying to be a name dropper.
Drop some names.
Here we go. We're talking GameStop, Williams-Sonoma, Best Buy, Home Depot, Caribou Coffee, and some high caliber brands.
Right. And not only do they make it look good, it's functional and they're cost conscious.
Which we love. So we are proud to have them as one of our sponsors for the Built for Profit podcast. That is Imperial Design and Display.
And Elizabeth, I have to give a little shout out. I love a good tagline. They have a good tagline. Let's move at the speed of retail together. So imperialdesigndisplay.com and click on the link to get more information about Imperial Design Display.
We'll see you in the next episode.